What up, YouTube? Here with Talkbox episode number 8, and I'm here to talk about a few topics on this episode. First things first, I'm gonna be talking about Saul Canelo Alvarez's future next opponents. As y'all know, it's been talked about amongst the boxing fans and boxing in general. This has been a hot topic. It's been rumored that Canelo has signed a lucrative deal with the Zone, a 2-fight deal for his next fight in May against Dimitri Bivol, who's the WBA light heavyweight champion, undefeated by the way, a slick, smooth boxer out of Russia, who has a win over Joe Smith Jr., who's the other, I believe he's the WBO light heavyweight champion, if I'm not mistaken, and he's had, I think he's like 18-0 or something like that. And then in September, after the Bivol fight, he would be taking on Triple G in their third fight in September. Now, it's not official yet, but these are two huge fights. Anytime Canelo fights, I mean, come on now, he fought what's his name, Alden or something like that, the Turkish former WBC super middleweight champion back in like February of last year, and that still did numbers. He's definitely the fighter of the year for 2021, beating two undefeated fighters, giving them their first L's, in Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant, and becoming the first ever Latino undisputed champion in the four belt era. So his accomplishments are on GOAT level right now. So if Canelo is willing to step up to light heavyweight, and he's won a title already at light heavyweight, pardon that, but that was against a old out of prime Sergey Kovalev. Now Dmitry Bivol is not somebody that's old, hasn't had a loss yet, and is a dangerous fighter stylistically, size-wise, and he's willing to take on Bivol before he has that trilogy fight against Triple G, which has been talked about ever since their first two meetings. But unlike the Dimitri Bivol fight, Triple G's fight against Canelo for a third time, I don't think is as intriguing as a fight against Dimitri Bivol or a David Benavidez or a Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo even. Why? Because Triple G is in his 40s. He's still the IBF middleweight champion. He hasn't fought outside of 160 pounds ever, and Canelo has moved on since their first two fights. Now their third fight should have been happened immediately following their second fight, because the first fight was scored a draw, which I thought Triple G should have won, and the second fight, I haven't watched that fight in a few years, but from what I remember, I had that fight scored for Canelo 7-5. But it was very close. And Triple G in his last few fights, he hasn't looked like himself. He doesn't look unstoppable like before. He's showing signs of father age, and father age is undefeated. And Triple G doesn't seem to have that same, he still got power, don't get it wrong. He still packs great power in his punches, but just doesn't have that same thunder in his punches as before. But nonetheless, these two fights would be a very very much highly anticipated fight, not only for boxing fans but the whole world, because not only is it Canelo, but you have a young, undefeated, bigger fighter, a champion in Dimitri Bivol, and then Triple G, who's also a marketable name, a well-known name in the sport, regardless of the fact that in his, last 3 fights against, relatively not so known guys at middleweight, which isn't the most intriguing division of the sport. Neither is super middleweight, but Canelo's there, and he's fought all the guys he could fight at 168, other than David Benavidez and Anthony Durrell. But other than Anthony, I don't think Anthony Durrell, no disrespect, is in the same category as a Caleb Plant or Billy Joe Saunders, because he's not undefeated. But Triple G, he didn't look so impressive like in his previous undefeated days against these not so well known guys. So that fight I don't really want to see at this point, but nonetheless, these fights are marketable fights, and Canelo's being offered Canelo type of money for these fights to be made. Now, it's rumored that they're very close to signing. PBC had a counter offer for Canelo to stick around with them, because y'all know his fight with Caleb Plant was with Showtime and PBC, and PBC wanted to continue doing business with Canelo, but it looks like Canelo's going with the Zone. But from what I read on ESPN is that Triple G hasn't signed the contract from the Zone to make this fight happen with Canelo, even though he's been asking for another fight with Canelo for the longest time, ever since their second fight. And like I said, it should have been happened. But the intriguing fight, the most dangerous fight for Canelo, I think, is for sure the light heavyweight champion Dimitri Bivol. But I guess Triple G is looking over the contract with his team, and try and work the contract out to his favor to make this come about. But according to multiple sources, this 2-fight deal with Canelo in the Zone is a very close done deal amongst the Zone and all the parties involved. So we'll just see. I don't know if Triple G's gonna back out of that contract as far as making these fights happen, but I don't know if that contract doesn't go through because Triple G decides that this isn't right for him. Then I don't know if Canelo's gonna go on and accept the 2-fight deal offer from PBC, because PBC has a counter 2-fight offer for Canelo. He would be taking on Charlo, who's the undefeated WBC middleweight champion, who, just like Triple G, has never fought outside of 160 pounds. He will be stepping up to challenge Canelo for his undisputed crown at super middleweight in May. And then immediately following that fight, Canelo would defend his undisputed super middleweight crown, against the former, I believe he was the WBO super middleweight champion. Correct me if I'm wrong. He never lost a title. He's also undefeated as well, and I'm talking about David Benavidez, who came off a hard-fought win in his last fight, in his return fight, and I know he wants that title, which he never lost, back around his waist, because he never lost that title. Now, that fight would be happening in September following the Charlo Canelo fight. If the contract with Canelo in the Zone and all parties disagree and that contract doesn't go through, I don't know if Canelo will accept this offer from PBC, but from what I read, I don't know if the Zone is offering Canelo more money, but according to sources, PBC has offered him over $100 million for this 2-fight deal. Now, as a boxing fan, y'all let me know which 2 fights sound more intriguing for y'all. What fights do y'all want to see Canelo take on for his next 2 fights? Would y'all rather see him stick around with PBC and defend his undisputed super middleweight titles against the former super middleweight champion, unbeaten, David Benavidez? That would stylistically be a very entertaining fight for anybody between David Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez. And then you have Charlo. In my opinion, David Benavidez, I don't think he's been as relevant for as long as Charlo has been, but they both lack when it comes to the quality opponents that they've faced in the ring. But they're both unbeaten. Charlo, as far as he goes, this would be him moving up in weight to challenge Canelo for his undisputed title. But I'd say the more intriguing fight for sure would be Benavidez and Canelo. But Charlo has been begging for this fight like anybody amongst the middleweight and light heavyweight division for that big money fight against Canelo. But David Benavidez has that size factor. He's actually fought at 168 throughout his whole career. He's been champion there. So I think that would be more of a fair matchup. But, Triple G, he's also never fought outside of 160 pounds. So would he be stepping up in weight to challenge Canelo for his undisputed title? Most likely. That's what probably Triple G is looking into on the contract that the zone is offering him. That's why maybe he hasn't signed that contract to make this third fight that he's been asking for ever since him and Canelo got in there for their meeting. Now, with that being said, I would personally like to see him fight David Benavidez and Dimitri Bivol. But they're both they're at the opposite ends of two different parties. That's why I think those are the two most intriguing matchups for Canelo Alvarez, the tougher challenges than a smaller guy like Charlo coming up in weight to challenge him for his super middleweight undisputed titles, and a old not in prime never fought at 168 pounds Triple G either. I don't want to see a third fight between Triple G and Canelo. I'm going to be straight up honest with y'all. And I don't want to see Charlo step up in weight, regardless of the fact that he's a young, undefeated talent. I don't want to see him move up to 168 pounds to challenge for Canelo's undisputed title. Now, I want to see how Canelo does at 175 pounds against a undefeated, in prime, in shape fighter in Dimitri Bivol. And stylistically, I think Bivol causes Canelo some trouble. Charlo and Canelo stylistically, I said Charlo and Canelo, pardon me. Bear with me, please. I say Charlo and Bivol stylistically causes Canelo the most trouble if they were to get in the ring versus each other. Now, David Benavidez, stylistically, I think Canelo could cruise through a win over David Benavidez, and I think he definitely beats Triple G at this point. At this point, for sure, I think Triple G gets washed by Canelo if they were to get in the ring nowadays. So those two fights, I don't really want to see. As far as Charlo and Triple G. David Benavidez, I say, I think Canelo, like I said, stylistically, the advantages in Canelo's favor, but it would be a entertaining fight. I think it would be a, not a chess match, but what most fans, especially the casual fans, would like to see. But we'll see. It looks like, Canelo's gonna jump ships over to the zone once more, from what I'm hearing. But y'all that's tapping into this video and that's been keeping up with what's going on as far as Canelo's future goes, y'all let me know where would y'all like to see Canelo fight next. Would y'all like to see him go back to the zone and have that third fight against Triple G and see how he does back at light heavyweight against an unbeaten Dimitri Bivol and try and become a two-time light heavyweight champion? Or would y'all like to see him take on two undefeated young bulls, WBC middleweight champion Charlo and former super middleweight champion David Benavidez? Y'all let me know. Now, moving on though to another hot topic in the sport right now, is Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury. Now, Tyson Fury is set to come back, I believe, in April to have his return fight in England. Mind you, he hasn't fought in his home country since like I think like 2018 or something like that. He hasn't fought in his home country for a few years now. He's been fighting in America. Building a huge name for himself. He's the lineal heavyweight champion of the world. He beat Deontay Wilder, snapped his undefeated streak. The first fight, I thought, like I covered Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury's fight before on this channel, and I had said in my previous videos, I thought Tyson Fury won all 3 fights. And mind you, Tyson Fury, he's undefeated. He has 1 draw on that record, on his record. I mean, pardon me. He's only has 1 draw on that record. He's never lost. He was the first one to snap the end of the Klitschko era. He beat Vladimir Klitschko to win majority of the heavyweight titles. And he went on to have some mental problems and personal problems, so he retired and vacated all those titles that he won off of Klitschko. Then he came back to boxing and put on a great show against Deontay Wilder, and then won his lineal heavyweight title and the WBC heavyweight title back. Now, Dillian Whyte has been the interim WBC heavyweight champion for over 1,000 days, so that puts him next in line to challenge whoever the champion is for the WBC organization. Now, according to ESPN, this article came out today or yesterday. Apparently Dillian Whyte has signed a contract and has agreed to have that fight against Tyson Fury at the Wembley Stadium. That's going to be a sellout crowd off top, no questions about it. Tyson Fury's big return in England. Dillian Whyte is a marquee name over there in England. So that's automatic that it's going to be a huge fight, especially over there in England. Dillian Whyte, he was scheduled to fight Wallen, who has fought Tyson Fury before and gave Tyson Fury actually a run for his money when they got in there. But Dillian Whyte had to pull out of that fight due to a injury during this training camp. And, this fight has been talked about for the longest time. It's got a lot of buzz behind it. A lot of boxing fans been tapping into, their potential fight. They've been, hazing each other, especially Tyson Fury. He's been calling out Dillian Whyte on social media, asking him to sign the contract. It's going to be a big fight. If this fight doesn't fall through, I heard Tyson Fury is still going to fight in April and possibly defend his heavyweight titles against Robert Helenius, who's a Finnish fighter from Finland. If this fight doesn't go through, but according to ESPN, if I could, I'm gonna add the link in the description box where it says in the article that Dillian Whyte apparently has signed the dotted line to fight Tyson Fury in April at the Wembley Stadium. There's been disputes as far as the purse split. Dillian Whyte wasn't feeling the 80-20 split, regardless of the fact that this would be the highest payday by far of his career. He's fought Anthony Joshua, but not at a Wembley Stadium. He's been next in line to challenge for the WBC title for over 1,000 days. He won that interim WBC title back in his last fight. He's been inactive, so hopefully he's been keeping up at the gym and training and all that, especially if he's going to challenge for the world title, which he's been in line to challenge for the longest time. I say, he won that interim title back, I think it was last year, springtime, following his upset knockout loss against Povetkin. He avenged that by knocking Povetkin out in the rematch, but he hasn't fought since. Mind you, he was supposed to fight October against Wallen, but he pulled out of that fight. But yeah, Dillian Whyte, like I said, marquee name. veteran, one of those gatekeepers at the heavyweight division. He's got a win over Joseph Parker, um, Derek Chisora. Yeah, he's a very recognizable name in the sport, especially overseas in England. And these two guys got both bright personalities. I'm talking about Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. So that fight, if Dillian Whyte did sign for this fight, it would be huge. I'd like to see it. It'd be entertaining. I'm gonna make a whole prediction preview video if or when this fight gets officially announced. But I think we all know who the favorite is in this fight. Now, I understand where Dillian Whyte is coming from, 80-20 split. He knows that he's a draw, and he doesn't, I guess, agree with the purse split. He hasn't been as boisterous as he usually is in social media. I guess he's looking through the terms for this fight to be made, but I think as boxing fans, this would be an event that we would like to see, and this would be, I think, the most sensible fight to make for Tyson Fury's big return to England, to have another big name from England to have this fight. This would be an all English fight in London, England, at the biggest stadium. Now, moving on. Let's talk about what happened with Jorge Linares this past, I think it was Friday or Saturday. I'm not sure. But this fight happened in Russia. They on different time out there. But Jorge Linares suffered a 12th round TKO stoppage loss against Zaul Abdullaev, who's a young Russian lightweight fighter. He's fought Devin Haney before. That's his only loss on his record. That was before Devin Haney, I think, was the legit WBC lightweight champion. And that was before Devin Haney became a recognizable name in the sport. But other than that, he's won all his fights. Now, Jorge Linares is a big name to have on your resume. Now, Jorge Linares is a former lightweight champion, a decorated veteran. But with that being said, man, this is a back-to-back loss for Jorge Linares. I thought he put up a valiant effort against Devin Haney in his previous fight before this loss against Abdullaev. And before that, he got stopped before by Pablo Cano for at 140 pounds before he stepped back down to lightweight to take on guys like Devin Haney and Abdullaev. And before he fought Haney, he won 2 fights, one of them via knockout. But he's recognizable for his title wins a few years ago. And his fight against Vasyl Lomachenko, where he was able to score a knockdown and drop Lomachenko before he eventually got stopped. Yeah, I think, like I said, he's done enough in the sport. He's accomplished enough, and he's taken enough punishment in the sport. Amir Khan, who pretty much catapulted him and had successes during Jorge Linares' best run. I think they both had their best run relatively around the same time. And Amir Khan, after suffering his loss against Kell Brook that same Saturday, announced his retirement from the sport following their fight. I think Jorge Linares should go the same route. Like I said, he's done all he could in the sport. I think he should focus on possibly becoming a trainer over there in Japan, where he resides out of. I think he could help the boxing scene out there. And yeah, this fight, a lot of people, you really have to be like tapped into the sport of boxing to give a fuck about a fight over there in Russia, or you gotta be over there in Russia to really give a fuck about this fight between Abdullaev and Linares. But it was one of those like local fights out there for the Russian boxing fans, as far as the Linares Abdullaev fight. But I think this does it for Linares' boxing career. He's at the age of 36. I think it's time for move on to other ventures. For Linares, if he wants to stick around in the sport, there's other routes that he could take. Yeah, and as far as Abdullev goes, 135 pounds, the lightweight division is the best division in the sport. He could be one of those names out there like a Jojo Diaz, Isaac Cruz, Javier Fortuna, one of those kind of guys at 135 pounds. His only loss, like I said, came from against Devin Haney. So if he wants to, move on to, bigger opportunities, he will want to go to America and, challenge guys like Ryan Garcia and shit like that. But, as far as Jorge Linares goes, I say it's time to hang up the gloves. As far as being a competitor in boxing. But anyways, that does it for episode number 8 of Talk Boxing. Y'all let me know what y'all thoughts are on all the subjects that I covered on this episode in the comments. If y'all want to talk about the same shit I'm talking about, or y'all already got a video talking about the same shit I'm talking about, and y'all want me to, check that shit out, whoever watching this shit, I'll check it out if y'all want me to. So yeah, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff if y'all want. And till next time, be safe, be healthy, and peace.